Hello, everybody, and welcome to Medicine and Science on the Pod TV network. I'm Nick Palavita. I'll be your moderator for today's program. And today we're going to look at three very interesting topics, all dealing with COVID-19. Nope, it looks like COVID has not gone away completely. It's still out there, lurking about. As a matter of fact, there's one data sheet I read that, well, still about 5.4% of the population is getting COVID, which is pretty high. But we're going to look at some of the solutions, or are they solutions that are out there on the internet? Are these myths debunked, or do they actually work? One is vitamin D. Vitamin D, I've never heard of that being a solution for COVID. The other one is ivermectin. That's been touted about, but we're going to take a look at it today. And hydroxychloroquine, which is something that is also touted. But since I am not a board certified medical practitioner in internal medicine, and I'm not a medical doctor, and I'm not some of the crazy ones that get on the internet who play doctor on TV, we need to bring a real doctor. And with that, we're going to bring in a real doctor who is board certified internal medicine and does practice medicine, a real MD. And that is somebody everybody has heard about in the United States, and of course, we're broadcast around the world. Let's bring in the Honorable Dr. Michael Patmos. Dr. Michael Patmos, welcome to Medicine and Science. And maybe you can thrust upon your sea of knowledge in this area, which I think is a bay of ignorance, which is what most people dwell in when they jump into the medical area. So what about vitamin D, ivermectin, and hydroxychloroquine? Are these magic pills that work, or are they debunked?
Well, good morning, Nick. Good morning to your audience. Thank you again for the privilege of spending a few minutes with you. I had no idea I was so famous. Go around Maui where I live. Nobody seems to know me except for a few friends. In any case, you've asked a great question. And what is it about some of these medications and what happened? Yesterday or the day before was a very important day in the fight against disinformation. And for a couple of years now, based upon a paper that was published in an open access journal, the idea has been circulated that vitamin D, among other things, is effective in treating COVID. So much so that certain groups, including the FLCCC Alliance, which is a group of doctors who advocate for unproven therapies in COVID, has listed vitamin D on their cocktail of what they call early treatment for COVID. It's called eye care, early COVID treatment. And, it's been published and disseminated on their website all over the world. Millions of people think it's accurate, and people follow the advice of the FLCCC very much so. I talk to patients every day who have taken some of these unproven and ineffective treatments. Well, on their list there's many, they have a laundry list of things that they recommend. And one of them is vitamin D. And how did vitamin D come to be thought to be effective? Well, it was based upon a paper that was published. It was based upon a paper that was published in a open access journal called PLOS One, PLOS-1. Now, that paper, when it was published, the journal didn't like the paper. They had some concerns about it, and they put a label on it called it's a note of concern. So even when a journal publishes a paper, if they think the paper is a little sketchy, they can put a notice of concern. It's published, but we're not sure about it. And it took 4 years of further investigation of the research before it was determined that this paper was fraud. The data was contrived, and the conclusions are not supported by the data. And it was just bad science all the way around, really bad science. And so that journal, PLOS One, yesterday or day before, retracted that publication. 4 years after they published it with a note of concern, they retracted it. It's now removed from the medical literature. Paper doesn't exist anymore, but the damage has been done. That paper was out there. It was quoted and requoted and repeated and taken as gospel. And it's now been shown to be a fraudulent paper that was retracted. And so when organizations like the FLCCC include information about vitamin D and vitamin D, and they were relying on this kind of research. And this kind of research it's not the kind of thing we want to rely on. So that led to your asking, a brilliant question. Well, where did this vitamin D notion come from? And what about the other ones, ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine? It's all the same issue. The problem is publication of poor quality studies in open access journals. If people don't understand what an open access journal is, that's part of the problem. Real medical journals, real scientific journals are not open access. Anybody can't just write something and stick it in there. It's not like a bulletin board at your neighborhood laundromat where you can post a flyer of your missing cat. These open access journals are like that. They're basically a bulletin board where anybody can publish anything. It doesn't have to even be thoroughly vetted. Now, they claim they have peer review, but that's one man's peer review is not another man's peer review. Real peer review, such as would be done by the New England Journal of Medicine, is an exhaustive, excruciating, brutal process where they scour that research. And the investigators, the research, they're blinded to the investigators, but they scour that research looking for any flaws. It's false until proven true. I mean, they are vicious in their level of peer review. These other open access journals, they just have like somebody that scans it, says, it looks good to me. And it goes, oh yeah, it's peer reviewed. Open access journals are a bottom of the barrel thing to publish in. If you're a physician in an academic environment, the last thing you're going to want to do is publish in an open access journal. It's just not respected. So that's where this vitamin D article came from. Open access, not thoroughly or accurately peer reviewed. Finally, 4 years later, exposed and retracted. Damage done. The idea is out there. FLCCC is telling people all over the world that vitamin D is an effective treatment for COVID. It's not. So what about the other ones? You've asked about ivermectin. Well, ivermectin is still widely thought by a lot of people incorrectly to be effective. Well, first of all, how did this even get how did it even get out there? There's no it's an anti-parasitic drug. It's used for worms, to treat worms and parasites. It's not an antiviral agent. Well, there was some basic science evidence of some effect in a test tube. Someone then published that, and then case reports. A case report is where a doctor writes up a case. Hey, I saw a patient, they had this, and then that happened, and they publish it. Case reports are very low quality evidence. You can't ever establish anything based on a case report. But there were case reports of people who said, well, I had a patient with COVID, I gave him ivermectin, they got better. So they publish that. And then other people come along and collect all the case reports and summarize them in a systematic review or a meta-analysis. Systematic reviews are only as good as what you're reviewing. So you take a bunch of lousy case reports, lump them together, you get a lousy systematic review. But that's the kind of and it was published in a open access journal. And so that became around the world a promising hope, for COVID. But the data was retracted. It's been shown to be fraudulent data, poor quality studies, case reports. Finally, well-done studies have been done with ivermectin. They're widely noted, right, and up to date, clearly showing that in well-done, placebo-controlled, randomized trials, there's no benefit at all. In fact, there's increased calls to poison control. Same thing with hydroxychloroquine. That happened because of a doctor, a family doctor now deceased, with very low quality qualifications, thought he observed a benefit, and he knew somebody who knew somebody, and he said, hey, I heard this doctor said that hydroxychloroquine works. And then they got mentioned on Fox News, and then Trump heard it, and he went on TV in front of the nation at a press conference and talked about hydroxychloroquine. Fauci had to diplomatically stepped that back, but that got Fauci in a lot of trouble. And when Trump basically said, oh, yes, hydroxychloroquine, looks like it worked, people went crazy for it. Again, and there was some anecdotal case report, kind of poor quality evidence. Along came well-done studies, no benefit at all. And there's been so many others, fluvoxamine and other medicines as well, advocated by, all sorts of low quality doctors, published in lousy journals. So the bottom line is that none of those medicines work. That the eye care thing on the FLCCC Alliance is all poor quality evidence. It's nothing that you can rely upon. High quality evidence has clearly shown that those drugs don't work. So the problem really is we live in an era of fake everything. We have fake Rolex watches. We've got fake Gucci handbags, and we have fake medical journals, open access medical journals. They're not real medical journals like the New England Journal, the Annals of Internal Medicine. And so the public can't tell the difference. They see a website of FLCCC. It looks very professional. It looks like the website from the American Infectious Disease Society of America. I mean, if you're a layperson, you can't tell. They both look pretty legitimate. One is real. The other one is not so real. So anyhow, that's really the issue. The issue is the public is at risk from journals, websites, organizations that look legitimate but aren't. I say that they are the fake Gucci handbag of the medical world. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Okay, we have Rick Rosner, who's joined us from California.
So,
what sort of questions do you have in this?
Well, not a question, but I'm not board certified in anything, but I'm good at math. And, for, I don't know, maybe the first year or two, COVID had a mortality rate of about 1%, maybe. And if you do the math, you can treat 150 people who walk into your clinic saying they have COVID. You can treat them with chocolate pudding, or you can treat them by clipping their toenails. And 22% of the time with that mortality rate, nobody will die out of 150 patients. And you can write it up, or you can call up a TV station and say, I saved 150 people. It's just due to the math. There are articles which list all the substances that somebody wrote something up saying, well, this saved everybody with COVID. And it's ridiculous, the list of stuff. Also, if you're running a walk-in clinic, the people who are like, the very sickest people aren't walking in. They're in a hospital someplace. So, yeah, there's a lot of garbage. There's a lot of bad math.
Rick, you are absolutely right. You nailed that. You're such a smart guy. You nailed that one right on the head. In fact, there is a very famous ear, nose, and throat doctor in Texas who claims to have saved thousands of people from death from COVID. She has an outpatient practice. She treats people with ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, and lo and behold, they get better. So she attributes the improvement to the stuff she gave, not recognizing or choosing not to recognize the selection bias there. The patients who present to an office are the ones who are not that sick. If you're really sick, you're not going to go to a doctor's office. You're going to call 911 and go to the emergency room. So she's got a selected population, a biased, skewed population of people with outpatient level COVID. She treats them with chocolate pudding or ivermectin. They get better. Then she ascribes that improvement. And this is sixth grade science. Association does not prove causation. And so many of these anti-vax doctors don't seem to fully grasp that. They're taking association and ascribing causation to it. You're absolutely right. It's all and Rick, you're not board certified or a physician, but you know what? You could write an article and submit it to one of these open access journals, and in a matter of no time at all, you too could be a world authority.
I used to have a mathematical scientific journal for this high IQ club I belonged to, and I was the editor. And, people would send me articles disproving Einstein, and I hated those articles. And I'd roll my eyes. but they paid $2 an issue for their subscription, so I just stuck it in the magazine and sent it out.
Was that Noesis or whatever they called that? Was that the one
Yeah. I was a very lazy editor, and so stuff got peer reviewed, but my peer review consisted of me going, "This is ridiculous. Some shop teacher in Florida has disproved Einstein. All right, here you go."
Was that Kevin Langdon in charge of that whole?
For a while, then he got sick of it, and yeah.
Yeah, okay. I figured they did. Yeah, when I saw this vitamin D, Dr. Pappas, I was going, wait a minute, isn't that like milk? And so the thing is, if everybody's drinking milk, everybody's cured. To me, it just didn't make any sense at all. And I was going, how do people, okay, in the world I operate, which is law and chess, okay, but chess world has a very interesting hierarchy, which is based on a 4-digit rating. In other words, you're rated, it's called an ELO rating. So everybody that plays will have, if you play hardcore tournament chess, you'll have a 4-digit ELO rating. And so people know your relative strength based on that. When it comes to medical science and frankly, even law, they don't seem to have any metrics. So what happens is the layperson who's looking from the outside can't tell the difference because there's no metrics saying this is better than that. In other words, you're looking at very low quality publications. You're looking at people's, frankly, we used to call them glib opinions or guys at the diner. In other words, some guy at the diner goes, well, I take vitamin E and I never got COVID, so hence vitamin E cures COVID. And everybody goes, well, yeah, I guess it does. I mean,
well, in the academic world, in medicine, in the academic world, there is a system. There's a pyramid, hierarchy of evidence that we all are taught in medical school and graduate medical education. And the lowest level evidence is anecdote or expert opinion, and then it goes up from there. And the highest quality evidence is placebo-controlled, randomized, multi-institutional crossover trials, and that's the most reliable form of evidence. So we look at papers and then we grade them based upon what level of evidence. And poor quality studies are not included in things like UpToDate. UpToDate filters out all of the poor quality, and what's left behind is the good stuff. So you can rely on it. Organizations like Physicians for Informed Consent and the FLCCC, they rely on lower quality evidence, and that's where they go wrong. So there is a grading system, and when it comes to authors and who's speaking, that's also very important. Physicians, no. Look, I'll be very blunt. There is a pecking order in the medical world from lower level, sort of, the bottom dweller physicians up to the upper echelon. And the upper echelon, they're the experts, and they're the ones that all the other doctors rely on. Who are they? Those are the academic experts at the leading institutions like Massachusetts General Hospital, Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center, UCSF, Stanford, the professors, the department chairman there. They're the world's authorities. They're the ones that they teach the rest of us, and they're the ones we should be looking to. When somebody comes out of nowhere, who's been sort of a bottom dweller and suddenly says, I am the world's authority, they say, well, doctors look at it and laugh. They just, we just laugh at that. The real experts, we all know who the real experts are. Just go look at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center in Boston and look and see who's in charge of pulmonary critical care medicine there.
Yeah,
I have a question about stuff I've heard, or maybe I half read someplace that might help knock down your odds. And I may do it sometimes because it couldn't hurt, but it also, I'm skeptical, which is, I've read or been told by lunatics that, that when you get COVID, it enters your body by implanting, in your nasal. So you breathe it in and then it gets in your mouth, your neck, your nose, and that's where it starts infecting cells. So if you do mouthwash, that maybe it makes a more hostile environment. Also, there's a certain brand of decongestant that if you squirt that in your nose before you go out, is any of that possible?
It's it could be that mouthwash or oral zinc might have a little bit of benefit, but it's obviously not a very large benefit. So I don't know of any high quality data from well done studies that confirms that mouthwash works. I just looked this up yesterday on Up to Date, and there's nothing in there that says that mouthwash treats COVID. It's on the FLCCC website. They recommend it. I mean, it's not going to hurt you. I guess you die with happy breath.
Okay, here's what I'm looking at metrics, Dr. Patness. Okay, when I travel a lot, which I do, I look at these hotels, and there's two rating systems I use. One is a star system, which is basically arbitrary. You got 5-star hotels, 4-star hotels, 3, 2, and 1, and it's basically published by the industry itself. In other words, the hospitality industry. The other one is ratings by people, and they'll go like anywhere from 1 to 9 to 8 to 7. Okay, and so when I look at rating systems, and this is just not something that is life-threatening, it's just staying at a decent hotel. So I look at things that are 4 stars, 5 stars or better. I look at things 8.0 or better, and I don't look at the ones that are 7, 6. And then restaurants are the same way. You have 5-star restaurants, 4-star restaurants. Now, when you go to doctors, you guys don't have star ratings. In other words, it's not like, okay, and even professors, when I was teaching at Northeastern, they have a place called Rate Your Professors, believe it or not. And I never taught enough to get on that, and I was curious. But at Northeastern, they did, at the end of the day, they always had a rating system to see where you fell in. It was 1.5. But why is it something that is so important to your health has no metrics, which means anybody who, and some of these I would consider a 1 to 1.2 rated medical doctor, can have an opinion as great as a doctor who's 4.7 to 4.8. Why isn't there a metric system?
I wish there was. I mean, one of the biggest problems we have in COVID is that there's an army of unqualified physicians out there, bottom dwellers with inadequate credentials, inadequate training, claiming to be authorities, and they're getting more airtime than anybody, and nobody's questioning their credentials. I'm sorry, but you're not an expert in any clinical matter if you never even did an internship. I mean, think about it. After medical school, you do an internship and a residency and a fellowship. There are doctors out there who never even did an internship, claiming to be experts in infectious diseases. That's just palpably ridiculous. But, there is a grading system for doctors that's patient-based, and health grades and all these other ones. And there's a problem with those. Patients judge doctors. How does a patient, a layperson, judge their doctor? They judge their doctor based upon the level of empathy, compassion, and their bedside manner. They have no clue whether or not the doctor's right or wrong, but they know that he's a nice doctor. And when I first went into practice, any doctor will tell you this. I remember when I first went into practice, there was a doctor who had, this enormous patient following. He was beloved, an icon of the community. And I said, boy, that guy must be great. And I watched him on rounds one day, and he literally stood at the patient's room and kind of waved at them and talked to them and shook their hand and chit-chatted, never even used a stethoscope. I said, this guy's a good doctor. And I found out he's really an awful doctor. He just was really nice, and patients loved him. But he had younger doctors working for him who would do the actual, write the orders and so forth. So any doctor will tell you sometimes these ratings, you have to take them with a grain of salt, because they're more of a personality popularity contest than they are really an evaluation. Sometimes really best doctors may not have the best bedside manner.
Right. Yeah. And that is one of the real practical problems of the rating systems. But that's one reason, like on hotels.com, they have 2 systems, 1 guest ratings and 2 industry ratings. And so the thing is, I can look at both plus the reviews. I would think that on the medical profession, you could have a industry rating for these people and then give them what they so richly deserve, a 1 star or 1.2 stars. They tried to do that in the legal profession, AVVRO, but they didn't do too well in disseminating it out to the public. The system really works well in travel and dining. But like I said, those to me aren't that important, but I still do the reviews and check. And the medical profession, legal profession, has basically nothing at all. And so
you just have to look at the person's credentials in the resume. If you're the professor and chief of pulmonary critical care at Beth Israel Deaconess in Boston, you're the top dog. That's all you need to know. There's no 5 stars there. It'd be like,
I know, but the guy that went south on this was a cardiologist at Baylor University. In other words, you look at his basic CV, he's good, and then he went local banana and maybe had a midlife crisis and then went into La La Land. And
Well,
so the thing is,
there had to be a lot of issues there. There had to be a lot of issues there because that doctor was removed from the medical staff by his peers. And that's not done. That's not an action taken lightly. When other doctors in a hospital say, this guy's got to go, we've got to get him off the staff, it's because there's serious problems with judgment and clinical skill. And that doctor was removed from the medical staff by his peers.
Seriously, though, how many lay people are actually going to go into the CVs of the medical professionals that they're looking at? Very few people. And we're in the land of fast food. We want a quick rating, give them a 1.2, in other words, 1 star. In other words, I would say, okay, because they hold a medical degree and they're still licensed to practice, they should have 1 star, and that would be it. But they're definitely not 5 stars, because you know who the 5 stars are. But guess what? I don't think Rick and I have a clue who the 5 stars are, or the 4 stars are. We don't.
In the medical world, we know who the top.
I know you guys know, but you don't. We don't. And so the thing is, when we judge him to be a 5 star, and so does your friend Joe Rogan, who doesn't know jack, judges him to be a 5 star because he has no ability to judge anything. That's the real problem. Rather than saying, okay, let's plaster this person with the 1 star that he so richly deserves. Anyway, that's my thoughts.
All right. So a question about masks. There's a lot of misinformation about masks.
Yes.
To me, it seems like surgical masks are ridiculous because most of your air comes around it, through here. Like you need a snug fitting N95, K95, so all the air comes through the mask, and then it intercepts the droplets, the little balls of water that might have COVID in them. But then there's also aerosols, which I guess are just raw COVID particles that might be dancing around like pig pen around somebody's head.
Very good comment and question, Rick. Up to Date has a really nice section on this, I just again read it yesterday, and what it basically says is that the literature on masks is complicated. It's very difficult to do really good studies about it, but there are a number of studies, some of them are very good, that clearly show that masking reduces the spread of respiratory infections, including COVID. And the variable is which mask and how it's worn. A mask that's loose is not going to work as good as a mask that fits tightly. An N95 is better than a surgical mask. But there's no question in the medical literature, there is solid evidence that masking helps. It's not 100% perfect. You can wear a mask and wear a mask correctly, and it's not going to work 100%. You're not in a sealed, hermetically sealed plastic environment. Okay. But the masks do help. And anyone who would suggest that masks are proven not to work doesn't know the literature, the quality literature. It's right there in Up to Date.
And then I have one more thing that I use anecdotal evidence for, which is I've heard enough people's COVID stories that they say, well, I was in an Uber, the driver was coughing, or I was, at dinner, somebody was coughing. Like if somebody's coughing around me, and if there's any way for me to get farther away from them, I will. That just seems reasonable.
Think about it. If I've got tuberculosis and I'm coughing TB bugs at you, and you're 5,000 miles away, obviously the distance. So clearly, it's just from a basic common sense point of view. You talk about respiratory infections transmitted, through the air, droplets, whatever. There's going to be a distance effect as it falls off as you move further away from the infected person. This is common sense. So distancing does work and masks work. But again, they're not 100% perfect. So people take advantage of the fact that if something's not 100%, they say, well, it didn't work. But it worked. It helps, and what we want to do in a situation like this is use all the tools we have available to try to reduce the spread of infection so that people don't die. That's what we're all about. This is what this means. It means don't send them home in a pine box. That's what we try to do. We try to keep people healthy, keep them from getting desperately sick or dying. And we want to use every tool we have that's known to be effective. And it's wrong, morally wrong, and professional misconduct to take something that is not effective, and to say it is because you mislead the patients and you mislead the public. They then choose the wrong medicine instead of the right medicine. They have an untoward outcome, and that falls right on the professionalism of the doctor who spread the false information.
Okay, and just in conclusion, because we're out of time now, for the viewers, just remember, vitamin D, COVID cure, no, 0 stars. Ivermectin, no, 0 stars. Hydroxychloroquine, no, 0 stars. Consult your doctor, and stay tuned to Science, Medicine and Science on the Pod TV network, and we'll see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.